Okay, this is where we left in previous lesson, and now it's time to go and add more details. And one thing that I noticed is that I can copy this panel line, this radio speaker line on the bottom part as well. So by that I mean, let me hit Shift and D, right click to paste that in the same place. And now if I move it, it's not going to give me the result that I want, because this is now a Boolean piece and it's live if you want to change something about it. But now I'm going to hold down Control and A on the modifier to remove that. And now I'm going to bring that exactly in here on this side and rotate it 180 degrees to bring that in here. Okay, now it's not showing up because, let me see what has happened. Oh, these ones are too much in the surface because of this piece. So now I'm gonna go, let me take this piece, which is the Boolean piece, and I'm gonna Shift D, copy that 180 degrees and bring that exactly to here. Okay, now I'm gonna cut again using this piece, Control and minus, and now you see it has revealed these pieces that are there. So now let's bring it up again, or bring the weighted normals modifiers to recalculate the normals for us. And then it's time to take the Boolean and try to move it on a good place. Okay, now let's take these and bring them to the place roughly about the place that they were. Okay, now I'm actually liking the idea of this double radio that we added. And totally, I'm happy with the idea. So now it's time to go and add details to these ones. And the reference that I have for these is this one. You see these panel cuts, all of these cuts in place, and I'm gonna add them. So now before that, let's bring all of them on. I'm gonna take these vertices, hit Inset, drag it back, scale it a bit, drag it up, okay, like so. Again, another Inset, drag it out, and then again Inset, bring the vertices out, M, and collapse. Or let's not collapse, I do not want that to be sharp. Let's just try to rescale that, or hit an Inset, rescale that, okay, like so. Now let's go back, and in here right away you see that we have way more detail on this piece, and that is going to be duplicated to this side. But first we need to go and take care of this piece. So now I'm going to bring in the cylinder and holding down Shift, drag out. Okay, now we need to rotate it in the right direction. So on this one, -90 degrees. Okay, perfect. And now on this one, in this side, we do not want any rotation. Okay, smooth based on 30 degrees. And I'm gonna drag it in just a bit more. And again, let me take this. And this one looks a bit off. It would be a good idea to put the pivot in the center, and on this one it's already in the center as well. And now based on the shortcuts that we did on the intersection, I'm going to take this one, and then Alt and A. Okay, I'm not going to actually use rotation. Now this one is exactly in the center, and now let's take this, and it looks like we are on a good place to go. And we're ready to do the Boolean piece. Okay, I'm selecting this one. And before doing the Boolean, let's resize this a bit so that it's much more manageable. And now I'm going to cut this line exactly in the half. And on this one as well, let's take this and this. Okay, now we have this one. Control and B to add a bevel. And I'm gonna take this side, drag it down. Okay, like so. And now let's Control minus to do the Boolean. And doesn't matter for the shading. We're gonna make that all right later on. Okay, now this is the active object. I can drag it up and use it to wherever I want that to be. Okay, now let's compare that to the size of the actual radio, and it looks like it's a good piece. Okay, now I'm going to take this one and this one. Because the pivot is in here, I'm going to copy this one on a radial manner around this piece. So there's a little bit of setup. There are some add-ons that do this, but we're going to do that in vanilla Blender. I'm going to take this one, and it has the pivot exactly in the center. I'm going to hit Shift and S, and now I'm going to bring the origin point to the selected. Okay, now the pivot is in here exactly. So now let me take this one, and I'm going to select this around the pivot. But if I now try to rotate that, you see it's not doing what we want it to be. So we need to offset the pivot exactly to here so that we could rotate that around this object. So now let's hit Alt, Control, and Q to bring the transform menu. And now it's going to be the pivot point now is individual origins. We need to set that to 3D cursor. Okay, now we got it. I'm going to Shift D and then duplicate, maybe based on 90 degrees. Okay, now let's take them all. Shift D again, based on 180 degrees. Okay, now because the pivot is in here, it's going to revolve around the pivot with no problem. Okay, now again another one, and this time, okay, looks like we got the piece done using the radial symmetry. And looks like that is too much. I'm not actually liking the amount of circles that we have carved in here. I'm going to Control Z. Okay, looks like this one is much more manageable, and I'm liking this one a lot better. So now I'm going to copy this one in here. Let's take this, remove it, take this one and the Boolean piece, Shift D, because these need to move alongside each other. Okay, and I'm bringing that to here. And make sure that you copy the object and the Boolean piece at the same time. Okay, now let's rotate. So we need to bring the rotate instead of the 3D cursor to the individual origin and make this one the active object. Let's make it bounding box center instead of that. Okay, now let's make it active element so that this object is now the active using the bright orange. And let's rotate that just a bit. Okay, now more detailing in the piece. And for this centerpiece, what we could do is mimicking this design in here. And because we're using a lot of round shapes in here, I'm going to make this one kind of sharp so that that's a bit more different. So let's bring everything back. I'm going to extrude, right click to paste that in the center and rescale that, or okay, now it looks like a bit sharper, but I need to do one thing, and that is adding a loop cut in here and try to raise this one a bit, but this is too much. So this one is okay, but I need to do something more and sharp this one a bit more. And the key is to go in here, and instead of using 30 degrees, let's use 20 or 10. Okay, 10 looks like a better value, but it's not giving us the result in here. So let's go back to the same 30 degree, okay, and bring everything back. And I'm just gonna take this edge in here, take this edge loop, right click and mark sharp. Okay, now let's take a look at it and decrease the bevel a bit. looks like, and now this is a good value. Okay, now this looks much sharper than what we had before. And then again, I'm going to take this and let's bring it up. Okay, like so. And then again, inset and inset, bring this back to create that bevel piece. And take this edge and do a small bevel. Okay, looks like now this is a lot better. And if I compare that to the piece that we have here, it's very good. And all of the details on this one later on is going to be done using Substance Painter. And let's see how far it goes. Okay, it's very good. And now it's time to go and add smaller details. And this is the way that it goes. We first start with the big shapes, the things that really define the shape. For example, if I take this one and go in, you see now everything in here is based on this cube that we scaled and are changing. And now you see later on we went ahead and added smaller details and smaller until the point that we are going to very small points. And this is the way to create 3D props. You start with big shapes and then start to add smaller details later on. So now let's take a look at the reference, and I'm gonna go for such details. And you're already familiar with these ones because we have done them in the intro chapter, so that's not gonna be an issue. Okay, now let's try to smooth this based on 30 degrees and push this a little bit to the surface. Okay, like so. And now I'm gonna cut this one in half. Control and J. And this one again, Control and J. So that we have a loop that goes all across. And then I'm gonna Control B to add a bevel. Okay. And now let's go back to see what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take this and drag it out. Okay. Now right away, I'm going to take this one, this Control minus. So let's go bring the weighted normal modifier down the list to recalculate the normals. So it looks like there are some shading issues in here, so no problem. I can go take this one and let's add a vertice, add an edge loop, excuse me, and bring it to here. Okay, move it so that it could change the shading a bit with it. Okay, like so. And now let me bring them on. And then I'm gonna take this, and this one and bring them back again to add that reverse bevel. Shift and B, excuse me, Shift and N to recalculate the normals. And then take this edge and loop it all the way through by holding down Alt and Shift. Okay, and now looks like we are good to go. Control B. And it's not doing the same thing that I want from it. Let's see what's wrong with it. Just Control Z a couple of times to go back. And I'm gonna remove these vertical lines in here. They are causing the problems. Okay, no problem. We could do that later on. So again, Control B. Now this time it's doing the job without any problem. So now let's drag it out like so. Okay, now this time we could go in and try to add those vertices to make the shading a little bit better. Like so. And let's do the same thing on this side. Okay, this one helps a little bit more with the shading and the look of the shading. So it looks like this one is too big because I'm going to copy that a couple of times. So now let's rescale that. Okay, like so. And drag it in. Now I'm going to use the array modifier, and this time it's going to be a long Z to copy that sometimes, because you see this is the design and we have it in some places in a couple of pieces. And in order to add the array modifier, first we need to apply the rotation and the scale, because you see now the rotation and scale have been manipulated because we did some changes to that. So Control A rotation and Control A and a scale. Okay, perfect. And let's add another vertex to make the shading even better. And I'm happy after we added the vertices on the bevel. Okay, after this one, I'm going to bring in the array modifier. So now the array is going to the wrong direction. And I'm actually liking this. Yeah, and I call this one the happy accident. I wanted to copy that alongside Z, but alongside X, it creates a good result as well. So now let me do something. I'm going to bring in an array modifier, and this time alongside X, no, it's going to be alongside Z. Okay, one, no, negative Z, like so. And let's try to increase the distance a bit, and maybe a couple of times. No, one time is okay. Okay, now you see this one is a lot better. We have a panel to add those buttons, and then we have another panel to add those extra buttons that we have placed here. Okay, that is going to be perfect. And the things like this one happen a lot during the production. You do something and you like the design and keep it. So now we have done this, and now it's time to go and add the buttons. And the button placement is very easy because this one is only a circle with a little bit of curvature to it. So let's bring that. Holding down Shift. It's going to be so easy. And let's push that in. Okay. Control A to apply the rotation and a scale. Smooth. Based on 30 degrees. And now I'm going to add a bevel to make that readable on distances. And make a very small bevel. 0.1, no. 0.05 is okay. Okay, now let's do the same thing. I'm going to array modifier this one to the exact same values on this one. So now let's add an array modifier. It's going to be along negative Z. Let's disable that. -1. So this is relative. We need to add a relative amount. Okay, this is good. Now another. Okay. This is good. We added the buttons, and now we need to add some buttons in here. And let's already add a bit of design to this. Let's bring it. Take this circle or this face in here and push that out a bit. Like so. And this is good, and I'm happy with it. I do not want to detail this one even more. And the next one is adding the buttons for this area in here. Okay. Now let's do the same thing. I'm going to bring in the circle, the cylinder, hold down Shift to make it a full circle. And looks like this one is a good value. Okay, now I'm gonna go cut this one and this one in. J, and this one to this one. Again, J. Bevel to separate them from each other. And now it's time to go back and try to push this to the left to fill the button space. Okay, perfect. And Alt and S to bring the pivot exactly to the center. And apply the smooth and based on 30 degrees. And again, I'm gonna take this Control and L, copy modifiers. Okay, it's copying the bevel perfectly, but it's not copying the direction, although it's going in Z, but it says that in here, we need to apply the rotation to get the modifier to work properly. But we need to manipulate its values a bit more. Okay. Let me see that. Looks like we could manipulate that a bit more. Okay, this is a lot better. Now let me take this one, go in edit mode, and I'm going to take this edge only and push that in a bit, because this is what I'm seeing on the references. You see, on this reference, you see it has a slight curvature on the flat surface. It's not completely flat. It has some curvature to it. Okay, now this is perfect. And looks like we could go and take this one, make it a bit smaller, so that we could see what is going on behind it. And now we need to offset this one a bit more to place that in roughly. Okay, perfect. And now we have 3 round buttons and 3 cylindrical buttons in here, which is perfect. And we're getting to a point that we're adding a smaller and a smaller details to finish this one off, and then gradually move on to middle and back part as well. And now it's time to add some secondary details around this cylindrical piece in here. So I'm taking the design based on this. You see, it carves into the surface and it's mainly texture based. Later on inside Substance, we will take care of this detail in. So I'm going to add that and make it a round piece that goes around that cylindrical piece. Okay, now this time, instead of creating new geometry, I'm going to borrow that from this. Shift D, again isolate that, and remove the bevel modifier because we do not need it. So now, let me take this one, Control plus to select everything, and hit X to delete them. Okay, now right click and N to create a new face. Okay, perfect. Now let's go back again. And this is the detail that we could carve in here. Let's go scale, Shift Y, so that we could scale this based on the details in here. And looks like it's good in here. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to do something to radial symmetry around this piece. So now you know the rule. We're going to offset the pivot exactly to the center of this so that we could use that as a copy point to copy this one alongside a radial array. Okay, I'm taking this, Shift and S to bring the pivot to the selected. Now I'm taking this. Now the pivot is in here. And in order to make that right, we need to go in here in the pivot section, and we need to set the pivot to the 3D cursor. So now I'm taking this. If I try to scale that, you see it revolves. If I try to rotate that, you see it revolves around the same piece. Okay, now I'm going to go and try to cut this part, and let's first do some changes to that. Bring that in here. Bring that out a bit. And then I'm gonna first do some detailing on that. So let's bring the pivot to the bounding box. Alt and S to bring the pivot in here. And then, excuse me, I'm gonna apply this scale hand rotation. And then do the reverse beveling. So Shift and N to recalculate the normals. Control B. Okay, perfect. Now if I take this and try to rotate it around this center line in here, I'm going to this pivot menu and set it to 3D cursor, which we have set to be in here. So now let's Shift D, right click to paste that in place, and one in here. Okay, Shift D and one in here. Okay, perfect. Now I'm gonna take this one, and this one, and Control J to join them together so that they are only one piece. And now apply the rotation and the scale. And then I'm going to take them as the Boolean piece to cut off on this part using Control and minus, and then drag it down. Drag the weighted normals modifier to recalculate the normals. Okay, they need to go in a bit to get calculated. So just let's try to take them and move them a bit in Y so that we could see them on the surface. Okay, perfect. And let's take a look at it, and it's okay. And now let's see what we could do about this. I'm gonna go in, take this one, Shift D to bring that, to see what happens if we cut this line in here. Actually, I'm liking this design. So let's go take this, and I'm going to take this vertex, make it bounding box center, and instead of global, we're going for normal. So this is going to be only from this point all the way to another. Okay, and then let's take this Boolean piece, which is this one, and instead of leaving that in here, I'm going to take it and bring it to this line. Exactly to the center of that line. And then it's time to take this and drag it out. I do not want this one to be extended all the way to the end, only to this part. Let's bring that. Take this one as well. Okay, looks like just a bit of more detailing needed. Okay, it's good in here. And in here as well, I'm gonna take this one, and this one, and drag them in. Or before that, let's remove these to make it a bit easier on us. And then take the vertex and move that in just like so. Okay, perfect. And now let's take a look at it. And now again, we are insisting on that diagonal line that goes all across in here. You see, there are a lot of diagonal lines. One is in here, one is in here, this one, and this one. It makes the design cooler. Now, I just took a look at the references and I found that this cylindrical piece in here is a very good idea to add. So let's go and start to create it. And the first thing, we're gonna go and create a cylinder. This time, let's go bring in a normal cylinder and we're gonna bring that to here. So Shift and A, and then we're gonna go bring in a cylinder and let's scale that to 0.1. Okay, like so. Now I'm gonna bring that in here and I'm gonna make it just the same scale as this one is. So let's just take a look and I'm gonna roughly eyeball that to get the design perfect. Or I could really make this one a little bit bigger like so. And we're gonna fix this later on. For now, let's just rough out the shape and scale to see what we get. Now it's time to go and scale that in Z. Okay, perfect. And I do not want that to collide with this piece that we created. So let's bring that back. And now I'm gonna make it smooth and based on 30 degrees. So right away, let me take it and using this one, Control minus, and we should bring this one above the weighted normal modifier to get the normals calculated all right. So now I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna bring the geometry back. You see in here we have the real geometry. So in order to bring the geometry back, I'm going to take the Boolean piece and add a solidify modifier. Okay, now like so, you see we get this cylindrical panel cut in here, perfect. So let's make this one 0 and start to play with the scale to see what we get. Now looks like the scale of 1 is okay to get a perfect panel cut. And in order to make that more detailed, I'm going to add a bevel like so. and I do not want it to be so much. So let's take a look at it. And the shading issue, I believe, is that it's colliding with the geometry a bit. So let's just drag it out. Okay, like so that the shading is much more manageable. Now let's go back and try to take a look at it from this view, and it adds a cool detail in here. And as I said, you shouldn't really care about these issues that you're seeing in here. We're gonna fix them all later on. Okay, now there are some shading issues. Let's go see if we could clear them. It's okay, but if we couldn't, it's gonna be all right because the workflow requires such a thing. So now the first thing is, let's go and select the Boolean piece, and it looks like that we didn't rescale the scale. Basically, we need to go and apply the scale so that the bevel and anything that we have here works on. So Control and A, and let's apply the scale. Now let's see the real bevel is kicking in. Okay, now let's go and set it to 0.1. Okay, let's see, before that we need to bring a lot of the geometry back. So on the solidify modifier as well, we need to go set it to 0.1. Okay, now this is a better panel cut. We have a better panel cut in here. And now let's go for the bevel, and let's add some more extra segments. And in shading, let's do hard and normal, doesn't matter. But overall, this is a better representation of what we are gonna do later on. It looks like better for now. And now it's time to go and create these bolts. It's gonna be easy. We've done that before. We're gonna place some bolts around this to create the illusion that this has been manufactured, and as a bit of a storytelling. Okay, now let's go in here and create a cylinder right about this size. Hold shift so that it becomes a perfect cylinder. Okay, now I'm happy with this. Let's drag it in and then take this one as the host piece, Control minus, to do the Boolean. So right away we need to go take this, or take this one, take the host piece, and bring the weighted normal modifier down the list. Okay, now the shading gets a little bit better. Now we need to do something for the geometry. First, I do not want it to be too progressive. Let's drag it out because later on we do not need to bake so much normal information. So Control B again. And now let's see. It's a very good one. And this time, even without going for reverse beveling, by only beveling this one so far, we were able to create such an effect, which is a good one. So now there's one thing that we need to do, and that is copying this one over. And instead of copying that, because this is going to be a symmetrical piece, I'm going to use the mirror modifier with it. So if I go and mirror that so much, it's going to be colliding with these speaker lines, which I do not want. So let's take it and drag it back a little bit, like so. And now I'm going to bring in a mirror modifier. So it's here. And now we need to take this object as the mirror modifier to the front panel of the radio, because we have this pivot point in here exactly in the center. And if it's not in the center, you can hit Alt and S to center this one out. So now let's take this, and in here I'm going to, for the mirror object, I'm going to select the radio so that it mirrors it exactly in this direction. Okay, in X is perfect. And now let's see, I believe that we should do that in Z as well. Let's go to global. You see this blue represents the Z. Okay, now let's go for Z. Now perfect. Let's take a look. And now it's a very good one, and I'm happy with it. And for adding the bolt, we do not need to do anything. You only need to go and bring in the bolt. It's an add-on bolt factory. Okay, and then Shift and A, and in here there should be a bolt. But since it's going to be a very simple thing, we're not going to put too much time in it. We only need to bake this one on the normal map. So bolt, let's see. what design we like. Okay, this one is a good one. A very simple bolt, and I do not want it to make it so complicated. So let's zoom. And this one needs to be very, very small. And let's rotate this one along X by 90 degrees. And just place it in here. Okay, roughly it's gonna be placed in here. And we're gonna bring that in the surface. Okay, like so. And now let me just apply the rotation and the scale. And now I'm gonna symmetry that. But in order to make that faster, I'm gonna take this and take this one that has the modifier, that has the mirror modifier, Control L to copy the modifiers from that. And now you see everywhere that we have that, this bolt has been copied out over as well. Okay, like so. And you see, adding these small details will really improve the design a lot more. Big details are important, but medium and small details are important as well. Just imagine this radio without having this amount of details. It wouldn't make sense, and it wouldn't be so much of a good design if you do not add. And now I'm thinking about cutting this part to make a sharp corner, because all of the corners are round, and it's a good idea if we could go and create a sharp corner to do something opposite of that. So let me go bring in a cube and scale that by 0.1. Okay, now I'm going to rotate that 45 degrees. Okay, now let's just make it way smaller, because I do not want that to be so huge. Only something like this, so that it's much more manageable. Apply the rotation and the scale, and then I'm going to take this and the host piece, Control minus. Okay, now you see it creates this part in here, which I'm actually happy with. And we can go take this one, and since it's non-destructive, we can go and do whatever we want to do with it. And I'm going to push that until here. Okay, perfect. And now let's do something. I'm going to take this one and scale that even more to make it cut off these pieces as well. So this one, Control minus, okay, and to this one as well, Control minus. No, looks like we need to do this one and this one, then Control minus, because that one was booleaning this one in that way as well. So let's just take a look and see if you like the design. I'm actually liking that, but it would be a good idea to bring some of that information back. And now we're gonna go and do a bool, basically bool the bool, to cut some of that. Okay, now I'm going to take this one and duplicate it and cut it from itself, and that is gonna be so easy. So let's go make it based on normals. No, it global is all right. Shift and D. Okay, and now I'm going to make it a smaller. Now let's drag it in here. I'm going to bring some of that information back. Okay, now that I'm taking this, I'm going to subtract these from each other, basically subtracting this orange from the main piece. So take it, Control minus, and this will bring the rest of the piece back. Okay, now looks like we could take this one and drag it out. And I'm feeling like this is adding a good design into this. And now I'm going to take this one. Let me take it. And I'm going to go into edit mode, because this one, if we go into edit mode, we take the geometry and we have the ability to manipulate it. And because this is getting boolean again, it's going to be very easy if we could do a new design. So I'm going to hit Shift D and drag it in here. Now you see, because we are in edit mode, everything that we do is going to be live in there, because this piece is already booleaned out. So again, another Shift D. Let's remove it, and I'm going to bring one in here as well. Okay, now let me take a look. And actually, I'm not liking this empty space in here. So in order to fix that, I'm going to take this one Alt and G to select everything, and then I'm going to scale that alongside Y to bring the rest of the geometry back. Okay, like so. And let's just move it out of the way. And I'm just trying to make it as close as possible to these lines. So let's take this one, and we could go for a vertex snap. So let's activate it, vertex snap, and set it to active. So now I'm dragging this one out, and let's hold down Control so that when we see a vertex, it snaps to it perfectly. Let's activate. So because this is a vertex, we need to go and snap it perfectly to this one. Okay, now in order to bring that back, we need to add a little bit of distancing in between them. Okay, let's drag it out just a bit. And because we added a bit of distancing, it's working all right. Now we need to take this one and move it in Y very, very slightly. Okay, now let's turn off the snap mode and add a bit of distancing to make a cut in here. Okay, perfect. And now let's do something. I really do not like these cuts that we have added in the middle. Now, because the workflow is so destructive, we can go back and take this Boolean piece that we have cut off. Now, if I turn off this Boolean, let me turn it off. You see now, it's not really getting affected by that cuts that we did. And everywhere that we move these, it's not gonna matter actually. Okay, let me delete those. And now instead of copying that so much, I'm going to rescale it and bring a lot of that back and have it only on this area. Okay, like so. Now let me take this one and drag it back until this part. And now I'm gonna do a mirror on this side to cut off that part as well, because I want to keep this part in the middle. Okay, now let's add a mirror modifier. Let me take this one and turn off the Boolean because we do not need the Boolean on this. And now we need to go for a mirror modifier. It's gonna be along Y, this green. And let's set the Boolean piece to be the main object. Let's make the Y. Okay, and in order to make that on that side, we need to copy this one and let's hit OK. No, it's not working for now. Let's select this main piece, this middle piece instead of that one. Okay, it copied out, but we need to apply the modifier and manually do the rest of the thing. So now let's take this, bring it out to cut off this part in. Now I'm actually liking this design even more. So now in order to make the shading right, I'm taking the host piece, which is the center one, and let's go in here and bring the weighted normal modifier down the list to recalculate the normals. Okay, perfect. And now let's do another tertiary detail on this. And again, I'm bringing this cylinder. I'm going to cut this cylinder all the way to this side. Okay, let's bring that here. And then I'm taking this one, Control minus. Okay, perfect. Of course, in order to cut that all the way, we need to take this one and select these other pieces as well, because these are different pieces and need to get the Boolean applied differently. Okay, now let's take a look, and we see a cut through here, which is perfect. Okay, now another thing, let me take this one. I'm going to do a reversed Boolean again, a reversed bevel, excuse me. Let's bring that as close as possible to the center line in here. Okay, like so. And another one in here. This should go close to the surface. And because we are using the Boolean, it's getting a bit slow, but it's not actually a problem. So now Shift and N on this one to recalculate the normals. And on this side as well, we could go and let's drag it out just a bit. Shift and N to recalculate the normals. And then I'm taking this Control B to add a small bevel to make the edges shine a little bit more. Okay. But before that, let's go and apply the scale on this one, because without actually having the scale applied, it's not doing a good bevel. So let's do a bevel to see what that does. Control B. Now you see it's not actually doing what we wanted. But if I go and apply the scale and go try to bevel, see now this is doing perfectly what we wanted. Okay. Now this is a little bit too much and causing some artifacts in here which we do not want. So Control Z a couple of times. Control B to add the bevel just a tiny bit. Okay, and on this one it's gonna be easy. Let's bring that in and Control B. Okay, like so. And then I'm going to drag this one in so that it cuts this diagonal edge line in here. Okay, now I'm happy with this design and I could call this one finished. Not this one, this lesson. But first now, let's take this main piece in here and bring the weighted normal modifier down the list to recalculate the normals. Okay, I believe it's enough for this lesson and we have added enough geometry and details. In the next one, we will go and add more details, maybe go to other pieces as well. Okay, see you there.